Here's a quick glance at the LeSS complete picture. First, we'll look at 10 principles at the heart of LeSS. These principles were learned empirically, meaning through experiments. Back in 2005, Craig Larman and Bas Vodde started experimenting with Agile practices on large products. They documented 500 Agile experiments in their first 2 scaling books, then spent a few years distilling their continued experience down to these principles. Let's touch on more with less. We get more responsible teams when we resist the urge to carve out so many distinct roles. It's often tempting to create more specialized roles like architect, release train engineer, many variations of middle managers, various types of czars. But giving fixed responsibilities to named roles takes them away from the team. Scrum and LeSS reduce the number of roles instead. Less segregation means more team self-management and ultimately a simpler, flexible organization. We're better able to collaborate with each other and the customer with fewer artifacts, handoffs, and fancy tools in the way. We want working products that meet the customer's needs, not intermediate inventory. There's more learning and fun when there's less burdensome process. Big companies tend to turn these knobs the wrong way, unless we are quite explicit that an adaptable organization is not designed the way yours is right now. There are several ways to learn about the other principles at the heart of LeSS. A LeSS framework is barely sufficient to kickstart empirical process control and whole product focus. Just like Scrum and Chess, LeSS includes a minimal set of simple rules to avoid excess process. The basic LeSS framework is for 2 through about 8 teams, so 50 people, and less huge is for 8 or more teams, sometimes thousands of people on enormous products. All LeSS teams try to develop one integrated shippable product every sprint. Large-scale Scrum is Scrum, not Scrum underneath layers of conventional management. Again, a LeSS framework is barely sufficient to kickstart empirical process control and whole product focus. Teams focus on the actual customer. True agility is a difficult path for most companies, so the 3rd book introduces guides. Guides are strong recommendations and tips that are almost always useful but aren't rules. Example guide topics are how to get started when you've got less than 8 teams versus when you've got more than 8 teams, what kinds of setbacks you can expect, specifically how to do multi-team backlog refinement, how to split requirements that seem too big for one sprint, how to stay sane. LeSS started with experiments in Scrum and Agility, eventually leading to everything else we've discussed. The first 2 books are quite thick and describe hundreds of experiments, some of which will be useful in your context and some which won't. The 3rd book has guides, framework rules, and principles, so read that first. I'm MJ at the Seattle Scrum Company. I'm doing this because most of the companies I work with won't get the agility that Scrum promises without the fundamental organizational design changes in LeSS.